You're listening to Pitch by Pitch with GP Shepler.
Welcome to Pitch by Pitch. I am your host, GP Shepler. Today, we are joined on the podcast by the world champion, Joseph Daniel Jackson, a.k.a. JDJ, a.k.a. the Shreddy Yeti, a.k.a. Low-Key Homeless, a.k.a. that dude over there. We are also joined by a member of Team Canada, an absolute legend in the pusher community, not the drug pusher community, in the adaptive surfing pusher community. We are joined by Ryan Eick. Really excited for these guys to talk. I am just going to be a fly on the wall and here to help you, the audience, out in case they get a little bit too deep into the terminology to kind of break it down. But before we do that, in case you didn't know, all of our episodes are now available on YouTube to watch as well. It'll be really fun because Joe and I are going to be showing fins and showing different pieces of equipment. We have lighting. It just kind of allows us to be a little bit deeper with the story. Plus, while you're there, make sure to subscribe. So search for my name, GP Shepler, SCHEPPLER, on YouTube and subscribe. That's where the episodes are going to be for now. Other than that, don't forget to visit One More Wave. That's 1mwave.com to hit up the store. We really appreciate your support in any way you can. I mean, obviously donations are awesome, but if you want to get a cool t-shirt, we have a bunch of sweet new stickers coming out. St. Patrick's Day is just around the corner. The luck of the Irish. You got to get yourself one of them green shirts. We got some killer shirts up there right now. We got a long sleeve coming out in a couple of days. Spoiler alert. Get to 1mwave.com, buy some shirts, buy some merch, drop us a like, drop us some love. Other than that, it is time for me to get out of the way and hand it over to the world champion, Joe Jackson.
Thank you. It still kind of sounds weird to hear. It's quite fun. Yeah, today we have a special guest. I'm glad that, Ryan, you're able to join us today. I want to hear from your words. What are you listed as under Team Canada? Because this year at World Championships, you weren't pushing like I was. You were doing a different, what I call a different title, but I want to hear it from your words.
Yeah, Joe, thanks for having me. My official title was just team official, according to the ISA. According to the rule book, though, it's water coach, which we'll probably get into because I think that was technically your title too. But we.
Yeah, it was I believe a lot of the support personnel that are in the water have one kind of water coach term, and it doesn't matter whether you're working in the assist category like I do, pushing or catching like Darren does. I know you have experience with that as well, or if you're in the visually impaired side and you're being what I call like a surf guide in my mind, because I think guide off of the other Paralympic sports.
Exactly. And that's pretty much the nomenclature across the athletes. I mean, you pusher catcher is also in your aspect. You know, it's nomenclature in the community, but if you look at the rule book, it's all water coach. So it's kind of there's multiple terms, but water coach would be, I guess, the officially official title.
What do you guys prefer? Because like when I write about it, what would you prefer me say?
I prefer
think I
guide.
just-
Oh, sorry, Joe. I prefer water guide
Yeah.
because it crosses over well. I mean, you guys are podcast hosts. You know how crossover is very important, and people see guide like the Paralympics. Summer Paralympics were 2 years ago, and there was guide, boom, right here. So I feel guide is better for VI athletes. Joe, what do you think's better for your category?
I don't think I'm so much a guide in the water. I don't even know if I would really consider myself a surf coach per se. I would definitely be called a pusher. I don't know if we want to make another nomenclature that maybe doesn't have as much stigma or weirdness with it, because pusher and catchers are what we do. We either push the person into the wave or you catch the person and get them back out through the surf. It's kind of, and really ideally the pusher and catcher can meet halfway, and so you really do a lot. I don't know if there's going to be standardized terminology, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk about a little bit, was just standardizing that, because I think it's unfair for myself to call myself a coach when I'm not being like my actual surf coach on Team USA, Sean Brody, or some of the other actual coaches. I believe Team Canada brought some of the able-bodied surf coaches. Is that correct? Or
Yeah,
your team was working with some of them? How did
we
that work for you guys, your actual surf coaches?
Yeah, sorry to step on you there. So we brought our whole what would have been Surf Canada did not qualify for the Olympics, the able-bodied Olympics. So we brought our Surf Canada coaches, our assistant coach, and our head coach swung by for a little bit. But they were our Olympic team coaches. So for Team USA, that's Brett Simpson, Simpo, as he's known as. So that would be the equivalent there of bringing in that. Both our guys are former tour guys from the 90s. So if you were in the surf community, we brought some heavy hitters.
These are accomplished
clarifying questions,
surfers.
guys. Are you
Yeah.
talking about world championships? And when you say tour, what do you mean?
Okay, yeah. So world champ at the ISA World Championships and the tour we're referring to I think at time it was ASP World Tour for the able body, but right now it's WSL. So the Kelly Slaters of the world, that's where they surf.
Yeah, these coaches were on like the WSL back in the 90s is kind of what we're saying, on top of being a part of ISA in the Olympic team for Team Canada, and they were over in Tokyo, which I think is a really neat concept and cool thing. I don't think all the teams do that. It would be cool to see more of that, because I think the able bodies bring a lot of surf coaching experience to a lot of the categories that we can still utilize in our own different ways, depending on the different adaptations. So I have a question for you on Ryan. This has been coming up a lot. Is it now adaptive surfing or parasurfing to you?
I mean, to me, it will always be adaptive surfing because that's the term I came up in. I understand that parasurfing has to be the way it needs to be in order to get into the Paralympics, according to the people I've talked to. So they want to keep
same thing.
Yeah, they want to keep it consistent, but it's always going to be adaptive surfing for me, even if they formally change the name.
Yes, I'll probably interchange the two very often, depending on if we're talking about competing or teaching or what is going on in the specific setting for me.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm always going to stick with adaptive. Unless it's at
like
the
that.
ISA World Parasurfing Championships is the only time I will probably use parasurfing.
Or
Yes,
Paralympics?
and
Would that be an example of a time you'd use it, or no?
the two times I'm going to use it is at ISA and the Olympics,
Yeah,
Paralympics.
I think I'm about the same. And Paralympics,
in
I'll
the
just
contest.
say Paralympic surfing. I won't even put Paralympic parasurfing.
It'll be a Paralympic surfing for me too, and it's mainly based off of what the contest name is, in a sense.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, question for you, Ryan: how does somebody who's able-bodied like you and I get into adaptive surfing to help? Like, what is your sport? First, start off with like, what's your sports background? Because I know a lot about it, and I think that's very integral. And then also, how did you get started into it?
Yeah. So sports background, you and I, it's funny. I listened to the previous podcast right before this just to make sure I didn't miss anything, but we pretty much have the same water background. I was a competitive swimmer forever. Too long. I like to say I know exactly how many tiles are on the bottom of my high school pool.
I know that as well, by the way.
Chasing that black line.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
it's the
then
worst.
I played water polo for 8 years too. And at the collegiate level, at the junior college level up in San Luis Obispo, Pismo Beach area. So that combined with
What school?
Yeah, Cuesta College.
Okay.
The number one JC besides your good old West Valley up there. Shep.
I was going to say pretty reputable in the 3C2A Cuesta's water polo team. I believe that the last time they played Cabrillo, men or women's team, I think that it was like a 25 goal margin.
Yeah, to give some perspective to that team, when we do our spring season, when I was playing, we played against some D1 schools, and we beat USC and UCLA. So that kind of gives you an idea of how good we were when I was there.
I used to joke where I grew up in the Central Valley, a lot of our really good players got exported out to Cuesta if they didn't go to West Valley.
As I say, we had we had a good group of Valley kids on that team.
There was. I think that West Valley coach is now coaching at a different school now, so I don't know how that school is anymore. But Cuesta is usually up there with the SoCal teams. I'll say it that way. SoCal is usually who's winning championships, just because there's so much talent. But
yeah, so pretty good.
So you have a lot of swimming and water polo background. Did you surf before this? Like, were you ever like a bodyboarder or a shortboarder or anything? Like, what's your surf background?
Yeah, so surf background, learned to surf late by surfing standards, at least in the competitive surfing world. I think it was 15, 14, somewhere around there. In Pismo, just kind of weird that the World Championships were just there, the ISA Worlds. And then Surf Santa Cruz, kind of off and on, being from San Jose. As you guys both know, that's a fun drive.
Especially back in the day.
Yeah, especially back in the
Yeah.
day. This is before all those Valley guys moved out to Santa Cruz, so it was still manageable-ish.
There was still localism
but-
going on. I'll say it that way.
Oh, it was don't wear your booties, right? It's that was the heyday of don't
Or
wear
gloves.
your booties.
Don't wear gloves and
So
don't put your hood on.
no, it was like you're going to be cold, and that's how we do it out here. And then when I moved to SLO, I would surf before class. Like I would do morning practice for water polo, then go surfing, and I was a primarily shortboard surfer at that point, and then go to class all day, and then go back to water polo practice. So it was, I mean, we'd run or lift in the morning. I'd go surf for 2-3 hours. I'd go to class, and then we'd get in the pool for 3 to 4 hours. So that's all the way up until about 06, 07. That was my routine.
I had a routine like that after the military when I did a little bit of school, but for some reason that didn't work out well with my classes because I never showed up to class because I was always surfing or at water polo.
Yeah, I may or may not have taken some tests in a wetsuit.
Nice. I appreciate that. I've gone the formation wetsuit, but I never took tests in wetsuits. I
When
always
you say test,
prided
can you
myself.
clarify?
Yeah, like
Sorry,
like
Jay, I didn't mean
like
to step on you there.
academic Scantron, sit there shivering because if I didn't, I was going to be late to class.
And you wouldn't be able to take the
I
test.
wouldn't be able to take the test. So I'd run
That's
in my
dedication.
wetsuit and be dripping in my chair, literally checking the bubbles, and then half the time leave and go back to surfing. But you know, it is what it is. Needless to say, I didn't last at that school very long.
That happens. I also know you've been to another school, and I wanted to touch a little bit on that. Can we talk about your time at, if I get this wrong, please correct me, but Cal State University San Marcos?
Bingo,
and
Joe.
what you pursued there? Because I think this is very integral into adaptive surfing and where you are now too.
Yeah, so I'll segue into it. So I was exposed to adaptive surfing right before I went there. I went to some clinics just to volunteer.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I went to some clinics just to volunteer. As I like to say, I have a pretty I have a pretty select skill set that tends to work with water safety in the ocean very, very well. And I wanted to use it. So I was trying to figure out, that concept of trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. Decided let's go volunteer. I got some free time, and then immediately that made me think I need to go pursue this. So I went to Cal State San Marcos, or California State University at San Marcos, if you really want to lengthen it out.
Shep understands that.
Oh boy, do I.
Do you know, Ryan, have you heard where Shep went to?
Did Shep go to Northridge? Just because that?
No, California State University, Monterey Bay, also a member of the California Athletic League, or Athletic Association.
There you go.
And I was a water polo strength and conditioning coach there.
Ah, so you know how crazy we are.
Oh, as Joe and I have discussed before, because I had the opportunity to swim for a bit at Providence College in the Big East, as well as dive for a year. And so I kind of got exposed to like that type of training and like that type of school. And then to like see how it was here, like it was a change of pace. We'll put it that way. I mean, I honestly never have. I mean, the CSUMB is on the come up right now for sure. They're doing a great job. Mm-hmm. But like Joe has heard me say this a million times. So has the podcast listeners. I don't understand why every coastal like JUCO in California isn't just absolutely like packed to the gills with swimming and water polo talent. But I understand the reason is because there are enough Division I opportunities open that most of the elites like go straight there. But man, as far as training conditions, like, I quit swim team because I realized I did not want to wake up in 1 degree weather and like walk across freshly salted pathways, trying not to break my neck to go into a hot, muggy gym at 5 o'clock in the morning. I was like, fuck that, dude. As opposed to like here, where it's like people, like literally every time you go to a pool at any one of these junior colleges, there's people laying out practically naked, getting a suntan and stuff. It's like, this is way cooler. I'm a West Coast swimmer at heart, baby.
I mean, I don't know, Chef.
So wait,
compared to my college experience playing water polo, that's pretty cushy. Your Providence experience.
Really?
It is in a
Well,
sense,
It is.
but there are days where it is, when it's nice and sunny out, it is very nice to have an outdoor pool. But I'll also tell you, I know what it's like freezing rain on that pool deck as well, and that sucks because there is nowhere to hide from it.
but I did that in high school. Like we had. I mean, I remember El Nino year when the water on the pool deck like merged with the pool. Do you guys remember those years when it was raining
Oh
so
yeah,
hard?
Yeah.
And that wasn't warm at all.
no,
But I mean, I don't know, man. Like indoor pools to me are disgusting. I just don't
yes,
like
Yeah, no, they suck.
especially on the East Coast with that humidity. They all smell like somebody's jock. It's just not my thing.
So Ryan, you didn't do swimming and water polo at San Marcos. What program were you specifically a part of? Because I want to talk about this
Yeah.
program because it interests me. Because
Yeah.
I think it's a very unique program, and I don't think that any of the other Cal States have this. Correct?
Correct. Where it's the only Cal State, at least when I graduated, that had this program. It was the kinesiology major for the layman, because I have to explain it more often than you would believe. It's the science of human movement, so it's all the science behind your PE, which most people think kinesiology is that cushy PE class.
It can be.
I mean, it can be. You
It
could
can
take. I took way too many yoga classes. I'm going to be honest.
Well, that was something I was going to bring out later, but we'll talk. We'll eventually
We'll
talk
eventually
more about
talk-
yoga here in a little
There
Um,
are like higher level education, advanced walking classes in kinesiology.
Yes.
Advanced
bit.
walking.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's a hard major. I mean, it's not easy. But so we did
'Cause
that.
you-
But Cal State has the surf science program
Nice.
where
So
they
your kinesiology was focused on ocean and surfing based sports instead of just everything. You guys got the focus in a little bit and really kind of tune in. What was that specifically?
Yeah, so we were actually, so technically my major was broad, but with all my projects, we got an opportunity to hone in, and I took advantage of the surf science lab, and all the research papers, like academic level research that was going on with that. So it was cool. We got to
That's
learn
awesome.
body mechanics, why wetsuits keep you warm. That was kind of cool. So I got to spend some time in there, but I did a lot of body mechanics type of stuff, how to paddle faster, paddle harder, how to train paddling, was a lot of it, which you guys are familiar with, like the swim glider deal. They just like rigged a surfboard on one, and we got to try a bunch of stuff with. If you watch ESPN when they do those cool surf science segment or the sports science segments, like I got to do
Yep.
those type of calculations with surf paddling, and breathing regulation and things like that. So it was really cool. Gave me a kind of an insight and gave me a knowledge background to keep working in the surf specific training.
Yeah, because I know I take advantage of that a lot of times because on top of what you do with Team Canada, we also do a lot of competitive surfing, and I actually utilize you as a surf coach outside of our national teams. And one of the things I utilize is your experience with kinesiology and your sports specific part, because I like the fact that you're able to break down to someone like Jose, like, yeah, instead of going so wide with your paddle, bring it in and do this with your hand and do this motion. You're able to break that down very well and communicate that well. And it's also been effective for you to explain it to some of the different categories on what they need to do body mechanically to be able to do certain turns or moves that they want to do. Because you work with a lot of different athletes besides just who you visually work with who you work with as a visual guide with Team Canada. And it's not just like me. There's dozens of athletes you work with.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I work with pretty much everybody in a
You
sense.
do. And what does that entail for you? Like, what are some of the things you do? Because I don't want to just explain it from my end, but what are some of the things like you and I do at a surf contest, like when we're in Oceanside or something like, or Huntington Beach?
Yeah, so Oceanside is really easy because I live in Oceanside. So that whole
Yeah.
like when you were talking about on the last podcast about like scouting the spot, I first thing I do is honestly I surf there for like a month. That's the only spot I go. Every condition, every wind, learn the bottom contours, learn the sand, and where that translates is to with an athlete, and you utilize me this for a lot, but I'm going to use a different athlete. An athlete that is a kneeling athlete, I can explain to them what the wave's going to do, and then the body mechanics to counter that. Because surfing is one of the few sports where you have zero control over your arena, and you kind of just have to go with it. And learning how to adjust in the body mechanics you need to adjust to the shape of the wave or the wind or the current is very important to being successful in competitive surfing. To put it as layman terms as I can for the average listener.
No, I like that. Any questions, Chef?
No, my only follow up to that would be, could you give us an example of like how the body mechanics come into play and how it would be different for a kneeling athlete versus, say, a visually impaired athlete? Like, what kind of difference instruction would you give?
Yeah, so a kneeling athlete, for example, they have much lower center of gravity, right? So all their turns are going to be more compact and come from their trunk or their shoulders initiating, because they're not going to be able to do any pushing with their legs. So what I would do is have them more like, if the wave is steeper, drive their shoulder earlier and lower than a visually impaired athlete who can go with their feet. But with a visually impaired athlete, I do a lot of touch when I instruct it. So I'm like, and I touch their body because I'm like, I need this part to move this way, for example. With visually impaired athlete I work with Canada Ling, I was telling her, so when you feel the wave do this, I need you to take this part, and I touch like the outside of her knee. I need you to bring that around like this, and while keeping your shoulder in the same position, hopefully. So there's just different aspects of it, and it's adapting your coaching style and how you coach to what their body can and cannot do. So the way I coach Jose is not the same way I coach Ling, which is not the same way I'd coach a kneeling athlete, which is not the same way I'd coach an upper body amputee.
Could you speak a little bit about the difference from working with an athlete that you're pushing, because you've pushed athletes like Jose and different athletes like that, versus what it's like to work with a visually impaired athlete? Because to me, I look at it as visually impaired athletes I couldn't work with because I can't communicate.
Exactly. No, it's
Real quick
yeah.
before you answer that, Ryan,
Mhm.
just want to clarify. You guys are talking about reigning 2021 world champion Jose Martinez. I know that like the three
Yes,
of us know him as
Yeah.
Jose.
true.
Just want to throw that out there for the audience, because we also have talked about Ling, and we're talking about a lot of different
Yeah.
surfers. So I want to help keep it a little
To,
clearer
to
in the
also be
mind.
fair, Ling is a two-time silver medalist in her category.
Silver and bronze, actually.
Okay,
We
I'm sorry.
No worries. We could have definitely gotten silver, but we decided to go have fun instead. And that's probably as factual as I can get with that. But anyways, so yeah, so man, I spazzed out, Joe. Sorry, you're gonna have to ask your question again.
You're fine. I'm only sitting back here munching on chips. Or you're watching on YouTube. You're probably laughing at this, but I want you to
I
speak
mean, I'm
to
laughing at you already.
what is it? What is it like for surfing Jose, and what you have to do physically versus what you have to do working with Ling? Like, what's the differences there? Because to me, I
Perfect.
know there's a big communication
Yeah.
difference. I just don't know what other besides that. Like, I think it would be harder for me to be a visually impaired guide compared to being a pusher.
Yeah. So pushers, for example, Joe, you can pull Jose back if you change your mind at the last second. I can't do that with Ling. So I have to if for the surfers out there that listen, you make all these micro decisions every second, every tenth of a second when you're surfing. I have to, in the beginning of surfing with a visually impaired athlete, you have to communicate those constantly because they can't see. So Ling's impairment is like if I took your head, I wrapped your head with saran wrap and poked a tiny little hole. That's what she sees. Everything's super blurry, mostly peripheral, and then there's this tiny little clear spot. So she's not 100% blind, but so she can walk around like daily without a cane or any guidance, but she can't surf by herself. At least well enough to compete. So I have to communicate like, oh, there's a wave coming outside, or oh, this one's gonna go duck dive, or hey, this one's kind of weird. Hey, watch that step on the drop. Oh, you're really deep.
Are you physically next to her in the water at this point? Like, just to clarify,
Yeah.
are you swimming out with her? Are you also on a board? How is that working?
So the rule book says I can be with her, in any capacity. So I can be on any type of craft, but I'm an extension of the athlete. So we, like Joe and we all love the surf mat. Let's be honest. Us three were kind of surf mat lovers. That would be a great tool, but if it gets in the way, she gets penalized. So I generally paddle out on a board that's easily maneuverable, but yet still floats well.
So you're talking about with a surf mat, it's hard to duck dive that under a wave, and the other surf team could be coming down the face, and you could get called for a penalty. Is that what I'm hearing from you, Ryan?
Exactly. Or I could lose it, and it's just
'cause
floating
there's no
there.
leash.
Yeah, there's no leash. So I could lose it, and then it's just floating there. And if they hit it on purpose or not on purpose, which if I'm competing against somebody and there's a surf mat floating in my wave, I'm going to hit it on purpose.
Of course.
It's strategy. I'm going to hit it so that athlete incurs an interference penalty.
I know about interferences and causing them.
Hey, I know about selling waves too, but we can get into that discussion later. So
Wait, so Ryan, before you
Yeah.
you continue on, so you're on a board with
With-
Ling going out through the break.
Mhm.
Now, as the wave's approaching, do you have hands on her board? Are you physically giving her a boost, or is she responsible for 100% of her own locomotion?
She's responsible for everything 100% of her own locomotion, of her own wave catching ability, of everything. I'm actually not allowed to touch her board or her in any way. Even if she falls really bad and she's like drowning, I'm supposed to leave her alone. I mean, not that I would in that example, but
Interesting.
but I'm supposed to kind of just like lit water safety help her and me just sit there. But
There is water safety out there, and water safety is who's technically allowed to go in and perform a rescue on her by the rule book, is what he's talking about.
Yeah, according
Very
to the rule book,
interesting.
I'm not allowed to touch her or her board in any way. That being said, if we're training, I will. But in a competition setting, I cannot touch her at all. I can only verbally direct her. And I technically can share a wave with her, so we can both be riding at the same time, but it's counterproductive. So she's a good enough surfer; she doesn't need that. So some athletes,
But after
probably
she
do.
takes off, you have to chase her because you can only provide auditory instruction to get her back out, as opposed to the pusher catcher where there's a person on either end of the scenario.
Exactly. So we only have one teammate with her, which would be me. In her instance, I've developed a series of auditory noises so I don't have to paddle, where I can tell her either a set's coming or paddle harder, or I just yell. I mean, I'm sure you guys have heard me yelling at Ling.
Yes, I have heard him yelling at Ling. It's not that you're like rude or mean or
No, it's just yelling.
like
It's
saying
just
me
loud.
things. You're just very loud. Yeah. And
Yeah.
during those heats, there's a lot of times it's very loud in the heat because there's sometimes 2 to 4 other competitors in the water with you guys too.
Exactly. So,
And waves and people on the
Yeah.
pier
yeah,
and an
it's
announcer.
an announcer, which you can't hear anyway. So
Yeah.
that's a whole nother story. A story for another time. But yeah, so I give auditory help versus what Joe can do with Jose is he can kick to push and then look and go, oh no, and pull him back. So
Yeah,
Ling
I've
and I
done that,
use,
or
you can sell, or you can do different stuff.
yeah, there's different strategies that I can employ with Jose that are harder to do with a visually impaired person, like selling waves. Like I think I told that story last episode of selling a wave to a certain team and making them pay for being sold to have to take a crappy wave in a sense. So you really can't do that with the visually impaired.
Which
Yeah,
makes it harder,
I think
in my opinion.
I think it all, yeah, I think it makes it hard too when you, for that kind of strategy to work. And I think it also makes it hard because, excuse me, your surfer may not know that they're in the way of somebody unless you tell them to.
Yeah, so with the priority system, which Joe very eloquently explained, which you actually did, you explained it pretty well.
Sweet. I'm
I
glad
have
to hear. That's a compliment.
it's I would have explained it different, but you explained it well. I implement different strategies with that, such as which you guys saw me do at the ISA World Championships, is go to a different point. And you saw a number of visually impaired athletes do. They go away from everybody, and then when they get priority, then they go back.
That
But
makes
I have to
sense.
communicate everything, and we use it. Ling and I use a very simple system: yes, no, left, right. It's pretty simple because she can see a little bit, But with an athlete like Josh Loya, who surfs for Team USA, his guide or water coach, they have a whole different system. So it's also athlete
And
specific.
yeah, it's athlete specific, and I also want to clarify that Ling and Josh are in two different visually impaired categories too.
Correct. Yeah.
I think
Josh
there's
is
like
How many
100%
total
100%,
visual categories?
Yeah, Josh
Okay.
is 100% blind. He can't
and
see
in
anything.
that, yeah, in that one, I think there's one guy that even like wears like some special goggles or something for that from one of the countries or something. But it's basically you can't see anything at all. Versus Ling, it's like technically, like legally, they're blind. They can't go drive a car or
No.
anything
Legal
like that.
blindness.
But
Legal
Yeah.
blindness
they might be
versus
able to walk. Yeah, they could probably walk around and get around pretty well. But
Yeah,
I think
Lynn can
Brian
walk
can speak
around
over.
fine. She operates a phone. Now it's like this close to her face, and like
Yeah.
the size of the text is like this big. But she can, she, but she, she can do basic things on her own. But yeah, she can't drive. She's legally blind. Unlike,
So what are some of the things you guys have worked on through the years? Like, have you guys worked on, board strategy, like working with the right board on the right wave? Is that stuff you guys
uh,
have been doing for a couple of years or not?
yeah. So we're working on board strategy now. That's a big goal of ours. We've been working on mainly when we first started working together, she was mainly on bigger boards.
What's a bigger board,
So
like a
8.6
9 foot
to
single fin?
9.6, depending on
Okay.
like your traditional longboard.
How big is she?
She is about my size, so
Height?
she's about 5'7". She's definitely lighter than me. I'm getting
Yeah.
Okay.
fat or fatter.
Just
Fair.
wanted to get
Yeah,
perspective
yeah.
for
So
the height of
she's
the
a
board.
smaller athlete. She's smaller. She's about 5'7", 5'6", probably about 110.
Maybe.
She's tiny. Yeah, maybe. That's like in a wetsuit, 110. She's
Yeah.
tiny. So an
She's small.
8.6 or a 9.6 is a lot of board for her. But now we've gotten down to a 6.6 to a 7.0. So we've shrunk down quite a bit. So now we're working on basically getting more comfortable with those smaller boards so we can start surfing like the 3-time world champion Melissa Reed from Team England, hopefully.
Yeah, because she is riding, I believe, some dark arch shortboards where they're like 5.6s, 6.0s, 6.2s, or something like that, right?
They're boards I would gladly steal from her.
Real quickly, just wanted to put it out there. We're about 32 minutes into today's episode, and so I wanted to bring you today's unofficial sponsor, and it's Poppies by Amy Sexauer, available now on Amazon. You guys may remember Amy. She's appeared on the podcast before. She's a writer for the Dead Reckoning Collective. This is her first book. It is a book of poems. It is incredible. I cannot recommend it enough. I just got mine in the mail yesterday, and I got to tell you, I was up late tearing into it. So go to Amazon.com. It's a small little online retailer. You guys may or may not have heard of it. They have a pretty good reputation for getting your stuff to where you need it to go, and drop, I think it's like $12. It is an incredible deal. Go get some poetry. Go sponsor an amazing poet. And then you can tell everybody forever that you knew Amy before she was the uber big time. All right. With that, back to the show.
So now we're back. What is the future of adaptive or parasurfing to you, Ryan? What do you foresee in the sport, and then what are some things that you look forward to?
I see the sport growing. You guys mentioned Paralympics. I would assume it's going to be in 2028. That's a fair assumption now. That wasn't a fair assumption a month
Agreed.
ago.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming, that being said, I think many of the teams will change by then. USA, Canada, because what we're seeing now is the elder statesmen who basically took the sport to where it is. And then there's an undercurrent of younger surfers coming up that I think are going to make some waves, no pun intended. Or maybe pun intended, I don't know.
I think they'd make waves. You can go both ways.
That's just the way I said it without
What a
thinking.
dad joke.
Hey,
Oh my God.
Exactly.
hey, you two will
Great
get
one.
in that dad joke club soon. But anyway, they'll make some waves and upset it, and I think it's good. But I do think it's at that point where it's gonna happen, but we need to be careful. Because
What do you mean careful?
Yeah, so not because of that the sport doesn't go, but these kids are getting pushed really hard at a young age. You mentioned Faith and Liv, that they might lose their love for surfing by then. I mean, it's happened to all of us. I lost my love and wanted to sell all my boards at one point. I'm sure I don't know about Joe. Joe has too many boards to sell.
Well, real
I've
quickly.
always kept. Well, I was gonna say I'll get into
N-
my surfing
Yeah.
philosophy after Shep's question.
No, Joe. Go ahead. Go with yours. I'll save mine for a little later.
I had a lot of competitive surfing aspirations before 2006 when I went to after I came back from Iraq. When I relearned how to surf, it was more about the therapy and just making myself feel better and like be able to tolerate the world for the next 24 hours until I could surf again. So for me, surfing became a very different thing. And that's also probably why I ride a lot of the surf craft I ride, because I just need something to ride every day. And a 6'6" shortboard doesn't always fit that bill for me in a sense. So I don't quite
Exactly.
have
We
that
got to
same
keep it fun for these
competitiveness in it.
kids. Yeah. That's kind
And
of where I was
so
going
that
is you got to keep it fun. Sorry, but we need to make sure
you're
these
good.
kids have a place where they can still
Do
have
you
fun
think
with
there's a
surfing and surfing is still fun.
do you think there's a good junior development program right now in the US, or do you think
Per-
we have some work to do
personally,
that we could really, yeah, because there
personally, I
used
think
to
we
be
have way more work to do to get on par with the other nations. I mean, USA is lagging in both in our I mean, if you look at the able-bodied surfing development, it's locked in. It's ready to go. We got 15-year-olds making the world tour. Um,
yeah,
which
literally
rip like could
locals.
literally win a world tour contest. She's really good. She's put tons of water in my face and I was okay with it.
She's done it to me.
Uh,
Yeah.
we're talking about for the listeners that don't know who we're talking about, Caitlin Simmers out of Oceanside. She qualified for the World Tour at 15, the WSL Women's World Tour at 15, and turned it down to have fun, basically.
I was at the pier one day and she was out there and I kept letting her just burn her. And one guy's like, "Are you gonna let that person just burn you all day?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's Katie Simmers. She could do it all day she wants. I don't care. It just means I'm not sitting in the right
Yeah,
spot."
she's one of the
He
best
like looked
surfers in
at
the
me.
world. Yeah, it's
I was like, she's the best surfer out here at this peak right now. She's gonna have whatever she wants. And I respect that and I don't really care.
so we need to get to that point of that nurturing and bringing up parasurfing, and there's no avenue for that right now with these kids. They have to either um, find a coach that's willing to help them out, which it's very hard to find a parasurfing coach that
There aren't
can
many of them.
and that could speak to them in a way that's going to be positive and constructive. I've been at fault at that at times, so I'll say that has not been my strong suit with some of the athletes, but I'm working on it.
As in you get very competitive and you almost push people a little too hard and it takes the fun out of it.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Push them too hard too quick.
Yes.
Whereas a surfer like I'm going to use Faith Lennox from Hawaii as an example for that. She could win able-bodied contests, so she needs to be pushed like that. And there's other surfers that don't
Don't need that.
don't need that. You shouldn't. We can't push them that way. But without full-time coaching and a full-time development program, it's really hard to identify those athletes without making the same mistake I did.
Now, does this development program, just because I want to spitball on this and just have this out there because I don't know, is this just surf contests or is this also clinics for the beginners and maybe like monthly meetups? Like, what would this look like to you? Like a quarterly contest with a monthly meetup? Like, what do you think would be a great development program to see?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have plenty of clinics. As you know, use the word inspiration. I'm going to say the inspiration porn style clinics. I think we have plenty of those. And that's Life Rolls On puts on a great one. Plug for Jesse Belauer,
Yes.
who you guys unseated as world champion. Um,
Exactly. Yeah, he's a tough competitor.
He's a tough
Anytime he's
competitor.
in the water, we love it.
No, and
We love
he's
it
a
'cause
great
he keeps
guy
us honest.
lately.
He is.
Silver at Worlds. this
Silver
past year.
medalist at this past year, gold the year before.
Yes.
He's a legend.
Multi-time gold medalist.
Yeah, he's a
Multi-time
legend
world
of the
champion.
sport. The sport wouldn't be there without him. I'm gonna just give him a pat on the back for that.
Agreed.
But
Does Jesse listen to the show? Do you guys think he
I have
listens?
no
Doubt it.
clue. He's in Hawaii right now surfing waves that I want to surf. So he's
Yeah, he's out with at VLAN with Koa Smith and Shane Dorian and
all the
a lot
boys.
of the boys out there. I think
All
Bob
the
was even
boys.
out there surfing with them. So I mean,
Yeah,
he's got
Bob,
good connections because he has that competitive surf background before he got injured. Correct?
Correct. Yeah,
Ryan, do
he
you remember?
was. So everyone or anybody in the surfing community knows that documentary Momentum Generation. He was the next group behind those guys, and he broke his neck at Zuma Beach, trying
Yeah,
to
and
get
I think
barreled in
he's
the
open
swimming
about it.
pool.
You can look him up
Yeah,
and
he's
talk about. But yeah, probably getting barreled at Zuma. It would
yeah.
make sense knowing that wave in that spot and
Yeah.
things like that. So what would
Yeah.
be
Where's
it? Would
Zuma
be like
Beach?
It's in LA, Shep.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. It's in it's
Oh.
LA County, just south of Malibu or north of Malibu, Joe. I can't remember.
South.
South. That's what I thought.
I think it's south of Malibu, more
yeah.
towards Santa Monica.
That is. You're right. Yep.
So does that mean like having like a competitive team, or like having like a surf club where you do like mock meets and go to club meets? Like, what does that look like?
I mean,
for a para or adaptive surfing?
yeah, I think having the club, and then having like mock heats, and then because there are adaptive surf heats at the lowest level of competitive surfing in California, which is the WSA, the Western Surfing Association. That's Southern California. Yes. I think the farthest north it is Morro Bay, if I remember the contest schedule correctly. So they do have adaptive heats for that. But that most of this time, that's those people who want to get to that next level, they only compete in 1 or 2 of those a year. So I think having
it almost sounds like having something to get more reps in and more kind of contest feel in would be important, is what I hear. That's kind of one of the gaps.
Exactly. And then just the coaching. I mean, I'm a coach, so I'm going to always go to that aspect of it. But these kids compete, and often the most feedback they get is from their parents. And as a athlete when I was a kid, and I'm sure you guys as well, it's always good job, you did great. And that's like where it stops. So I think
do you guys know, does the Scholastic Surfing League have an adaptive component?
No. NSSA?
Okay.
Not that I'm aware of. I do not think they do.
And that's up to that's just they probably don't have enough participants. I mean, I would think the NSSA would love to. I know Carlsbad High School has adaptive athletes on their surf team roster, but they would be champion every year because it's just those two. I think it's 1 or 2 people.
Noted.
So
there's not many of them out there.
But then that's also just numbers. I mean, it's people fly from all over to go to those clinics, but that's where it stops. They'll do the clinic for 5 years, and then they'll be like, okay, that was fun. I'm gonna go try to be a Paralympic basketball player, or Paralympic tennis player. So I think Paralympics, once that rolls around, it will help too.
Or I think it will. Or what's going to happen, we're starting to see this at One More Wave, is riders are starting to see some of the exploits of Jose and some of our other riders that are world champions as well. Because we have Sarah and a couple others, I believe, on our roster, and they're like, "Hey, I can get out there. I've done 5
Sarah
surf
Betancourt?
clinics. I can go." Yeah, Sarah Betancourt is one of the world champions I'm talking about. She should be multi-time now, but there are some people that are now seeing what she's doing and what Jose's doing. They're like, "Oh yeah, I could easily just go out and do that and not have a team." They've only done clinics before, so they don't have like a coach or anything. So yeah, what are some ways, Ryan, that coaches can get out there?
Before you move on, can I ask a quick follow-up to both of you about what you guys were just talking about?
Absolutely not, but go ahead. Yes.
Why do you think it is so common for para athletes to participate in multiple events? And in terms of like, it's very rare for there to be winter and summer Olympians in sport, right? Unless it's the end of your like summer career in track, and so you go push a bobsled or something like that. Why do you guys think that it's so much more common in para sports? And do you think that helps or hurts the progression of adaptive surfing?
Joe, you go first, because I'm about to drop some fire.
Fair enough. I really wasn't paying attention, to be honest.
Oh.
Okay. Well,
to be honest, I was trying to write notes for the question I already had, and that's why I wasn't paying attention. I'm sorry. I'm like writing things, and my attention sucks, and I can't multitask. So I'm sorry. If you want to repeat that, I'll go over it again with you, Shep. Now
I'll drop the fire, Joe, and then you'll figure out what the question is, I'm sure.
What? How
So
to
I
make
like
adaptive
bust Joe's
surfing better?
balls, and then Joe immediately like points out that I'm being the asshole and bullying him. It's like, oh, what a reversal.
God, I'm trying not to do that to you.
So
We don't want to make people look like assholes, but let's hear it, Ryan.
Shoot. All right. So so now that we're done
How about
being,
that as a segue?
now that we're done being assholes, so for winter summer, I'll use sit ski. So I'll use an athlete we know and that you guys mentioned last time, Alana Nichols. That's her last name, Joe.
Okay, I'm glad you know it because I fucking I screw it up all the time.
I looked it up. Anyways, so
Well, see, I can look it up. I still can't read, so that's why I didn't want to attempt it.
all right. So to get back on the rails, it's so a wave ski. She does wave ski and she does sit ski. I mean, I'm making a gross oversimplification. But it's biomechanically very similar. One is on snow, one is on the water, but they're both sitting and using the torso to do and the arms to do the turning, right? So she can cross, and her other sport she won a gold medal in was wheelchair basketball. But from surfing to snow sports, I'll just use those two. It's a very similar biomechanical process, and without a development program and tons of athletes, you're gonna get the crossover, just because these are elite level athletes. For an able-bodied community, you see guys like Nathan Florence, pro surfer from the North Shore. He's also very, very good at skateboarding.
Yeah, like freakishly good. Could be sponsored as his own skateboarder.
Yeah, he could be a pro skateboarder.
Like Danny Way, who could have been a pro in skating, surfing, or snowboarding simultaneously.
Exactly.
And
he probably could have been all of them. So it's just one of those skill sets, right? You got all of them. And I think that a lot of times, and even some of those sports are crossover sports. For example, there's a Winter Paralympic athlete who made the team this year, who I actually know, and she does surf. Leah Doderlin, I probably mispronounced that name, but she's on the development team for sled hockey, and she just made the Paralympic team in Nordic skiing, because this is how you push a sled and this is how you Nordic ski, right? It's the same motion.
Makes sense.
So I think that's why there's a lot of crossover, is because biomechanically with the adaptations these athletes have to make and their training, there's a lot of crossover training.
I was going to agree with that because Sarah Becancourt is a sled hockey player.
Yeah.
I've looked that up. I don't know much more than her history of awards and
she's really good.
Success she's had with it. I know she's really good, but I don't know how good.
They're her sled hockey team's local, and you can go play whenever you want as an able-bodied athlete, and she has definitely knocked me over more than a couple times. So
we have a friend going to go do that on Saturday morning before he comes and hangs out with us at the beach. So yeah, it's quite an amazing thing. And you talk about that transfer. It seems like there's certain sports in the established Paralympic community that have been crossing over to certain categories of surfing, parasurfing for me, or adaptive surfing. Like you see a lot of sit ski surfers do also mono ski, like racing and whatnot. You see a lot of sled hockey do a lot of the prone surfing where they still paddle themselves out through the water. There's just a lot of crossover in those two I've seen right off the bat. And it's not just the examples we've named already. There are a couple more in there on top of that, which is interesting.
Yeah. Where it becomes fuzzy is those stand-up categories. Because that's a different, surfing's a whole different animal once you start getting on your feet.
Yeah.
It depends on your it depends on your adaptability, because to me watching somebody that has an above knee amputation or an at hip amputation stand up versus someone with a below knee, it's a way different thing biomechanically to me, the way you have to shift your weight and control your body.
It is.
I asked because from like a growth perspective, it's actually, in my personal opinion as a marketer, it's better for there to be a lot of crossover, because then you're able to market the same faces every 2 years, as opposed to being on a 4-year cycle in terms of like that Paralympic kind of front row opportunity to succeed. And, that's how you get on the cover of a Wheaties box. You got to be exposed, as consistently as possible. At least that's my thought process. I was just curious to hear your insight. Joe, I know you had a really fascinating question for Ryan. Thank you for letting me interject that. I will now shut up and slide away.
Most of it's gone, and I don't understand my notes anymore. Welcome to my life, but that's
Joe,
okay.
Damn
I
it,
don't
my
understand
bad.
your notes either, so it's okay.
Like I've literally, it's for the folks that are listening, you can get on YouTube and you can see my chicken scratch and notes that I literally took a picture of and sent to Ryan and Shep and was like, hey, by the way, here's the show outline. Enjoy translating that. So they kind of knew what was coming today, but that wasn't all of it. One of the things we were going to talk about coming back to was your yoga past. And how much has that influenced your surfing, and also what are you almost accredited in yoga? Because to me, I think your teaching hours you have and the accreditations you have are, they're significant. They're not easy to get. So if you don't mind talking about that and then how that applies to surfing.
Yeah, so I'll answer the accreditation question first. I am a certified 200-hour yoga teacher. I got it while I was in school because I needed um, some of
Credits,
those like general
units.
kinesiology classes that people take just to like people take just to fill units.
Yeah.
However, luckily those applied to my degree, so that was kind of cool. Um, and then I'm one class away from the 500 unit one. It just requires an internship at a yoga studio, and I really don't want to do that. I'm going to be honest. But
Yeah.
I've
You don't want
taken
to
all
put
the other
that much
classes.
time in.
So you don't have
So
time for that at this point.
I mean,
yeah.
I
So
could,
you've
but
done yoga where you've been the type where you've done yoga for weeks on end, months on end, for like hours a day kind of thing. And
exactly.
what did that do to your surfing? Because we talked a little bit about that recently, the difference of you just surfing versus yoga and surfing, or lifting and surfing.
Yeah, so just surfing, me personally, I'll speak for myself. I went to use a lot of legs and everything. Felt it was very leg-based sport. And then once I started doing yoga, my core. So for you guys for listeners that don't know all these terms, the core is like from here, like right below your pecs or your chest muscles down to like your hip bone. There's a bunch of little muscles in there, and that allowed me to apply more power to my surfing. It gave me more stability in a turn, so I could get a little more to not quite use a really old word, a little bit more radical. Um,
I imagine it also allows the core strength allows your shoulders to open up and your shoulders to relax, which is important for connecting turns and making sections and stuff too. I imagine that helps.
yeah, it's good for when the conditions aren't ideal for that. Where there's a
Yeah,
wind, when
that's a
there's
good way to put
chop,
it.
when it looks like it's about to dump a bunch of rain, because it's all choppy and stormy. It's really good for keeping the board under your feet. If you guys watched the sunset
Yes.
contest, that was an issue with a lot of those surfers. And sunsets has way more power than any wave I've ever surfed. So but that yoga will help with that. And then what it did, otherwise, and when I went back to parasurfing, was it allowed me to identify with athletes that core engagement is going to be 90% of what they do, like world champion Jose Martinez, how to use his core to initiate his turns and how to hold his rails with his core. And it allowed me to just try things with those athletes to try to further the sport, and get them to do maneuvers that people didn't think they could do, such as off the lip floaters and throwing spray off the back of a wave and
Yeah.
high quality, very difficult, able-bodied surfing maneuvers for a parasurfer by just engaging different muscles.
Basically, Jose can outsurf me on a surfboard.
Jose can
I'll say
outsurf
it
me
that
on a
way.
surfboard. Jose's good.
I mean, dude rips. One of the ways I was going to talk about growth was, what are ways for people to find an adaptive surf coach? Like, how do you find these people? Are you basically finding them through the clinics and competitions and online?
So a lot of ways people find me, I'll speak for myself, is I am at the same clinic. I'm going to shout out John White, who's another volunteer. He's great. He has a surf camp clinic, very loose format, kind of just hang out, have fun. Last Sunday of every month in Oceanside, and I'm there pretty much every time. And people have learned that and find me, and then they just ask me, "Hey, can you take me out again?" And then so the way I got into coaching was I went to one of those, I helped out. Um, Particular surfer's mom was like, "Hey, can you take him out more often?" And at the time I was a student, so I had tons of time. Yes. So just ask people, do you know a
Yeah.
surf coach? You go to the clinics. Hey,
Yeah.
do you know anyone that could take me out? You know,
How do people get a hold of you?
they can find me on Instagram, social
Okay.
media, Sir Salty Beard. My beard used to be not quite Joe's big, but bigger. So when I made that Instagram handle, and so that is definitely a place where people can find me. I'd recommend hitting me up there first, or you can find me at Oceanside North Jetty in the harbor at last Sunday of every month. I'm usually there.
I love it. And so that's Waves for All. That's the last Sunday of the month.
Waves for All, last
I do
Sunday
like
of the
John
month.
White. He's awesome.
He's awesome.
Um,
You don't really need to
you
bring
know that,
anything, just you. So that's another reason
and
why
for
this is a
those
great one.
people, that know One More Wave, that's the weekend after the One More Wave meetup. So the next weekend you could get your surf stoke if you're in Oceanside and want to help start learning about taking adaptive athletes out. You know, you can reach out to Ryan and even John White with Waves for All, but Ryan and Sir Salty Beard on Instagram. That's a good way to get a hold of you. Now that we're at 55 minutes, I'm just going to say this. I think the surf teams in the adaptive and para communities are going to change greatly. And I'm going to say it's going to be a game changer when Hawaii ends up combining with the US, that the whole team is going to get shuffled up pretty hard. Because I'm not just going to say Faith is going to be one I'm worried about. I'm worried about some of these other surfers that don't even ever do any adaptive contests because they don't believe in that. But now that it's in the Olympics, I'm waiting for them to show up.
Oh, so we're going here now?
I am. I'm not saying you have to, but I am. I'm just putting that little hot take out, and I'm just going to see where it goes.
I mean,
we're at 55 minutes, so if they're still listening,
if you're still
then
listening,
I don't really
you know my opinion on that subject. But yeah,
you could go as deep as you want, but I'm just saying that. I'm just leaving that there.
I think half of the Team USA roster from this past year will not be on the roster once Hawaii merges in.
I agree. I'm even worried about our position. Even Jose and I are being world champions. We're still going to have to work hard to make sure we're still on the team. I'm saying it that way.
Yeah, every athlete on Team USA, men's, women's, every category, once Hawaii merges in, will need to be put on notice. That being
why is
said,
that, guys? Why is Hawaii so stacked that it like
they're going to elevate it because they have like surfers that surf in WSL events like Bethany Hamilton, who I keep encouraging and hoping actually show up and just show the world what athletes can do in these kind of conditions and just absolutely run away with it. There's even some guys on the guys side. Really, to me, what it is, it's going to really separate your competitive surfers versus people that enjoy surfing, to me. Because that's two different styles of surfing. Being a competitive surfer, and Ryan maybe is willing to talk mentally on that. To me, I'm an asshole when I'm a competitive surfer, but if I'm just Chicken Joe, I'll laugh you off and I'll party wave with you. If you're going up against Joe Jackson in the surf heat, I want to take your head off and I'm going to make you pay for every single wave you take from me.
Oh, that's so for the listeners that don't know by now, Joe and I used to compete against each other.
We probably will again at some point. We probably will again. We're not on the same team.
In the Pro 2 division, Joe and I in a big competition competed against each other, and I may or may not have pissed Joe off.
More than once. But I also knew the games he was playing, so that's why we get along so well.
Because once we leave the beach, we weren't friends, but once we got back on the beach,
I don't think you've lived until you've pissed Joe off.
I mean, I'm sure
it's kind of a rite of passage.
It's a rite of passage in competitive surfing for sure. But
to surf against your friends and really to get mad at your friends in the water and take it seriously enough, but get on the beach and still have fun.
Exactly. But to take it back to Shep's question, now that we're done giving each other a hard time, there are multiple surfers that are adaptive surfers that don't compete in adaptive contests because they are that much better than everybody else. Bethany Hamilton is one. Mike Coots is another. He's a below the leg amputee. He does waves that I won't even ever surf in my life because I don't want to die. And I say that very seriously.
Affectionately and respectfully.
Yeah, like there's a wave called Chopu in Tahiti where the Olympics will be this year. I will never surf that wave because I will die, and I am not exaggerating.
Can I ask you guys
yeah, go ahead.
A question about that? Like, and look, let's be totally frank about this. If an adaptive athlete can compete in a traditional surf event, I would be willing to bet you anything that 15th place probably pays better than first place in an adaptive surf event. Do you think that like it's just a question of money and exposure? Because sometimes, like as a pro athlete in the alternative sports world, like you have an obligation to participate in certain competitions throughout the year.
So I'll speak on that now that Joe. So for the people who are watching on YouTube, there's a reason why I'm wearing this jacket. I have.
Oh, I'm going to ask that question because
Okay.
I was waiting for Joe to ask why you're a dirty turncoat, because you don't sound like a Canadian.
I am 100% not Canadian, but
Well, I was waiting for the hour mark and we could really start fucking cussing and saying shit.
All right, there we go.
There
Now
we
cut it
go.
loose.
I was gonna
Fuck
come
the
after this little
algorithm.
hot take.
Hey, Joe, so for Shep doesn't know this, but first question I asked Joe when he said, "Do you want to be on the podcast?" is, "Can I cuss?" Because
of course,
because I have a very, very vulgar mouth at times. But anyways, to answer your question, surfing in general is a question of money. Surfing is a rich kid sport. I'll just total up some gear that I've bought over the past 3 years. I bought a wetsuit that cost $350. I bought multiple surfboards totaling probably $4,000. Now I didn't pay $4,000, but just for the sake of my argument, $4,000 worth of surfboards in the past couple years. I've purchased way too many pairs of yuccas.
I would be fair to say that you bought that wetsuit at cost at $350, and you've actually probably bought a couple other wetsuits within the last 3 years too. From what I remember.
Yeah,
because I work with you on that.
Yeah. If we were to give the retail value just in the past 3 years of the gear that I have acquired just to participate in parasurfing, in the way that I have, it would be upwards of $7,000.
That's crazy, because I remember when I first got introduced to surfing in Newport, like surfing, not like messing around on an old rescue board. My buddy Pat Israel said, like, snowboarding is the rich kid sport. Surfing is a one-time expense, and then access is free. You don't have to pay $100 a day for a lift ticket.
So that is true for your recreational surfer. However, your competitive surfer, I'm going to use Jose as an example in this, since we all are intimate familiar. Jose brings to a contest 4 or 5 boards that are custom for him. Those boards, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, because you know the figure, it's about $1,500 a board, give or take.
At least $1,500 to $2,000 if you count all of his traction pad, his handles, and his fins.
All the
modifications. But just the board itself is probably $15. Then the modifications are probably another $5. Plus, Jose's very blessed and gets his wetsuits professionally altered and designed. But if most of these athletes do not, so they're looking at retail value on a wetsuit, which a good wetsuit is probably $4. I mean, these guys aren't buying the wetsuits Joe and I are buying.
$400.
Yeah, $400. Excuse me, not $4. I wish wetsuits were $4.
They were one day, not anymore.
No. So $400. Then the alterations they have to do, if they're not blessed like Jose, and the alterations are free, are probably are a couple $100.
$100 to $250.
Yeah, a couple $100.
$250.
Yeah,
we did that enough with one more wave.
So just if Jose has sponsors, so they pay for all this. But for an athlete not like Jose, that's a hefty, and that's before they even figure out hotel and airfare, right? That's a lot of money.
Never mind the support team.
Yeah, never mind the support team, which you got to feed, or they get mad.
On top of that's just for competing. That doesn't count the 3 times a week he's down at the beach, and he, all that travel time, and also the wear and tear on the equipment for just practicing and putting the time in the water. Because that's the other thing, is those guys and gals put all the time in the water.
Exactly.
Too.
So it's a rich.
To be competitive, you really need to be putting in hours in the water, not just a couple sessions a month.
And just to be able to live by the water, much like live by the mountains, is a cost in and of itself. Like the money that we save on gas, we certainly make up for at this point in rent.
Oh, dude!
As oil approaches $100 a barrel, that is becoming even more the case. I wouldn't be surprised if we actually see a somewhat thinning of the surf zone, as long as gas continues to climb in California in excess of $6.
I don't know. I'm not foreseeing it slowing down that much, but it will a little bit.
It will take away. So where I live in Oceanside I could be the beach in 5-10 minutes. In a car, I have to drive, but 5-10 minutes. Joe can walk if he really wanted to. Jerk.
Or ride my bike.
Or ride your bike. But it will take away those guys that are east right? That guy who comes maybe once or twice a month, he might come
Yeah.
once instead of twice.
That's
He
what I'm
might,
saying.
yeah, but that's really not in our community, in our surf community, and as well as yours in Santa Cruz. I'm assuming, I haven't surfed Santa Cruz in forever. That's a very marginal group.
Well, the thing is
At
a
least,
lot of veterans can't afford to live here. And so it seems like more and more people live in Sacramento or Stockton or inland, Modesto. They live inland, and then they did what Joe used to do. I mean, Joe used to
Drive in.
drive 2 hours to come surf for the
2.5
day.
hours.
that's because
Yeah,
Joe
Each
is
way.
way too dedicated.
Yeah,
Joe's a
I lived
psychopath.
on the east side of the valley, and yeah,
He lived in
it was
the
an all-day
valley.
thing. The real
valley.
the one you see from space. I don't want to hear LA folks or SD folks. Oh, I was over in the valley. No, I am from the one you can see from space, motherfuckers.
And I'm
Bring
from
it.
Central.
Yeah, and I'm from in that part of California, what they call over the hill.
Yes.
Not the valley. Sorry, Silicon Valley. You're not the valley. You're over the hill. Just FYI.
Yeah, for sure.
And I embrace my valley kookness very hard. So, yeah.
So now that
Any
we
other
can
questions, Shep?
now well, Shep wanted to know
That
why
did
I'm a
answer
bloody
my question.
turncoat.
Well, I do
Oh,
want to
yeah,
know
that-
why you're
we do wanna
working for
talk
Team
about that.
Canada.
So basically, the reason why
Wait, hold on. Before you
Yeah.
tell us why, because I'm realizing that we didn't get to this earlier. What's the difference in support between an athlete on Team Canada and an athlete on Team USA? Tell us about the financial support and about the logistical / competitive support that comes with it.
So we at Team Canada, I'm gonna speak for according to what I have had to sign my life away to. I am an official athlete of the government of Canada. So are the other Team Canada surf members. We are an athlete of Surf Canada, which is the governing body of Canada, Canadian surfing, presented by Rip Curl. Got to throw that in there because that's actually part of the whole team name. Believe it or not, it really is.
I'm sure they paid a lot of money to
Well,
have
they
you say that, so it
paid-
makes sense that everybody has to say it.
Yeah.
They should get on YouTube and see his jacket right now.
Yeah, you should because it's honestly one of the nicest jackets Rip Curl makes. But but versus USA Surfing is a nonprofit 501c3.
So wait, just to
Surf
clarify,
Canada is not.
Surf Canada is
there's a
not
difference between a government subsidized program and an independent nonprofit.
exactly.
Yes, a huge
Okay.
difference.
Huge
Just wanted to
difference.
clarify.
That being said, I don't get paid for travel yet.
Do you get a monthly stipend?
I do not because I'm not a citizen of Canada. But if I wanted to go
Okay.
take my citizenship, yes, I would get a monthly stipend. It's very, very small though. But so it's not.
Whereas
Joe,
Team
did you
US
just hear him say citizenship?
Yeah, I heard. Him.
Okay.
It's okay.
Hey,
He's good. I let it slide.
Citizenship. There you go. I changed it.
Thought there was
But
You can take
Shout
that out
out to
post
even-
production, Shep.
on Team USA, I will say that you don't get a stipend unless you're a veteran. The veterans get a special stipend being on Team USA. It's a VA specific program and benefit for being a veteran, but most
and that's
of the
through
athletes,
the VA.
that's through
not
the
Team
VA. That's
USA.
not.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
not
that is
through.
not Team USA. That's not USA Surfing, as I would call it, USA Surfing. Basically, USA Surfing this year, from what I understand, they were the ones who, with the sponsorship of Team Toyota, covered our entry fees and then got us a little bit of swag, some nice jackets and some team labeled stuff. I was wearing one of them a second ago, a long sleeve and some sweats and some things like that. But
Yeah, so we
The
also had our
interesting
entry
thing
fees
is-
covered. So that's
Yeah,
the
the en-
similarities, entry fees.
one of the things I wanted to bring up was for like Team USA, it's not a knock on them that they didn't have everyone's size and everything for the whole team, but that was something Team Canada definitely had.
Yes.
And part of that is just because of the governmental sponsorships and the organization and the way it's set up.
Yeah, so for us we get Rip Curl gear. Rip Curl's a surf company, kinda.
Yeah.
They're
not bad.
They're a surf company, but they're owned by a giant hedge fund.
There goes that sponsor for us.
They're owned by a giant hedge fund, like many surf companies
there's-
are.
Yeah, there's two major conglomerates that own pretty much 90% of the surf brands in the world. At least the big ones you see in most
Nike
shops.
and Quicksilver?
No, it's like Blue something group and Board Riders group.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So I think Board Riders Group is Quicksilver. I think Nike Hurley got bought out by them. I
Mhm.
could be wrong.
They
I
did,
mean, I don't
yes.
really want to go in, but
Nike
basically, like
Surf. Yeah.
This is a giant rabbit
Billabong,
hole.
Hurley, yeah, Rip Curl, any of the big brands that you know of at a surf shop, they're owned by a big conglomerate. There's very small brands that aren't owned by these guys.
With the exception of the
So,
Florence Marine X, which is owned by John Florence and Bob Hurley.
yeah. See, that's like
And Vans, right? Vans is still
Vans is
independent, I
not.
believe.
Nope.
Vans
Vans
is still-
is owned by Board Riders Group.
Are they now? When did they get bought out?
Really?
A couple years ago.
Last couple of years?
Yeah, a couple years ago.
Really? Okay.
That was after Van Buren died.
Ah, yes. That's why. Van Buren would kept him independent.
For the
whole time.
listeners that don't know, that's the guy who founded Vans.
Yeah. I had
It's
like
pretty
a
easy to-
heartbreaking thing. I went to go try. We did like baby pictures the other day, and I went to Vans and tried on 8 different pairs of Vans, and none of them fit my fat, nasty foot. And
You have to buy
they have a
customs.
pair of TNCs. I know, but I wanted the TNC like exercise foam ones.
How's it feel to want?
It feels,
Welcome to my life with
like having a
Vans.
fat foot.
Sucks to suck,
Yeah.
guys.
I understand this life because I buy all custom Vans now that come in wides. A lot of Vans shoes you can buy in custom in a wide version. So that's how I've hacked Vans, is using wides. But yeah, I don't get any of the cool specials.
Shep, move down here. They got wides down here.
Do they?
Yeah, the store in Encinitas has wides.
Yeah,
Well,
they're like one
that
of the
doesn't
few ones.
surprise me. I mean,
Just
But they
FYI.
won't have the TNCs.
Yeah,
They
they're
won't
based
have
out
the
of Orange.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
Van
they
store
won't
in
have the
Encinitas
TNCs
has
in
tons of
wide.
wides. What they don't have in wides are TNCs and MTEs, but they have everything else in wide. But anyways,
back to Rip Curl sponsoring Team Can. Well, I mean, it's a fucking
mean,
podcast.
yeah,
We're an hour and 10 minutes
yeah,
into it.
nobody
Now
freaking
is when we
cares.
can do rabbit holes.
It's-
Nobody's listening.
I mean, the people that are listening are going to be us three figuring out what we did at the end of it.
Pretty much.
If I even
right?
listen to it.
Yeah. So we're sponsored by Rip Curl, Red Bull, Corona, and some bank that I've never heard of.
Gonna go out on a limb and guess it's a Chinese bank.
I'm gonna guess it's a Chinese bank or a Canadian bank.
Is it HSBC?
No, it's not HSBC. It's
Okay.
I honestly, it could be. I don't know. It says bank, and I stopped paying attention.
Fair enough.
But what they cover is, so they swag us out really good. Rip Curl, I had to submit sizes in like August, and then they magically have a bunch of gear that shows up. That's all branded. Now with that, all those sponsorship come contracts and WADA testing and all the things that Olympic level athletes have to do.
Whoa.
So-
Joe, are you getting WADA tested?
That no, because Team USA, it's really weird right now how we're listed. But right now, I'm not. I'm waiting. I'm waiting for the day I'm going to have to submit a WADA contract, and that's going to suck. But
So
Oh my god, those fucking clowns.
So I am subject to WADA testing. At least I was up until
Have they ever knocked you?
no, I've never tested. I was subject to it up
That's
until the end of December. But the reason why I have to wear this cool jacket that you go buy one, they're nice, and that's just not because I'm sponsored. It's a nice Astro. It's a nice jacket. This is the thinner one, Joe, not the thick, cozy one. So they gave us 2 jackets, a pair of sweats, a hat, and like a shirt, a couple other things. Way more stickers than I ever need. But the reason why I have to wear it is now contractually, anytime I talk about the 2021 there's the stickers. I think I left them with Joe. The 2021 ISA World Championships presented by AmpSurf. Shout out Dana. I have to wear the gear.
Dana Cummings?
Dana Cummings, founder of AmpSurf, Team USA surfing member. I have to wear Canada
At
gear.
AmpSurf on Instagram.
Yeah.
Nice. Contractual obligations.
Contractual obligations, which I'm okay with because it's nice gear. Like ask Joe, I wear it all the time.
it's really nice gear, and some of the other gear may have ended up in Mavericks pictures in the background. On
yeah,
the
that
water
was from
safety man.
2020. Yeah, that 2020 jacket that I wasn't
That was a nice
supposed
jacket.
to do
That was
that.
a thicker jacket.
That was the it was the
That's
older
okay.
it's the older version of this
It's
jacket.
the old. Yeah, I was like, it's the old one.
It's
okay.
the older one
So-
of this jacket.
Ryan, what I'm hearing is that some textiles and some stickers is all it takes for you to betray your home nation and go to the Great White North? Like, seriously, what is going on? Why
Well,
have you
hold on, Shep.
abandoned
Hold
us?
on. I
Hold
have
on.
Hey, hold
You
on.
haven't-
First of all, you have a Canadian on your team, so we traded.
I was gonna say that their Team Canada had a very methodical trade, and the Team Jose World Championship team has a dual citizen on it
It has
from
yeah.
Canada.
Team
we talking
USA
about
has
here?
a Canadian. Team USA has a Canadian wearing a gold medal for them.
With Team USA gear on.
With Team
surfing
USA gear on. We traded.
So that's a fair trade.
It's I don't know about
we
that.
set this up.
I don't know if it's fair. I believe Canada paid way too much to make that trade. I am much more valuable than that gentleman.
I don't think he ever will hear that, but that'll be funny.
We're not telling him that.
Oh, we'll see if he hears it.
If you hear this,
We'll
I'm
see if he
sorry. Anyways, but no. So ISA requires or does not allow a guide or a surf coach to help athletes from multiple countries. So Ling, the visually impaired athlete I help, she is Canadian, born in Canada, lives in Vancouver half the year. So I am now, because I am her surf guide or water coach, however you want to use the terminology, based on how cool you are, and I will judge you if you use the wrong term. I am on Team Canada. I've never lived in Canada. I am not a Canadian citizen. I do like poutine and hockey a lot, so I'm good there.
How'd you two get linked up, you and Ling?
I think she was at a contest and she knew that I was helping out. She asked me to take her out one time, and I think that's it. She's like, "Can you be my surf guide?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. Well, let's do this." I think it was like just at a clinic and she just needed somebody, and then she's like, "I like him." I know. How does anything happen, Chef?
Nice.
But we do get to surf in able-bodied contests because of that. So we get to surf in the Supergirl Pro. Not for Canada, just because we're awesome. So that's us. We're cool.
Sounds good.
We're cool like that. Canada is they support us in a lot of ways. And if I want to get my citizenship, yes, I will get paid to surf. So I can say I'm a professional surfer.
I like it. Sounds good to me. Well, the people know how to get a hold of you. Anything else you want to plug before we?
Let's throw tags out one more time. Throw those tags out one more time for us, Ryan.
Sir
How many different
Salty
tags?
Beard is the Instagram tag. Sir Salty Beard. No weird spelling. No numbers. Check it out. Or you could probably go onto Joe's page and Shep's page, and I'm tagged in some stuff, so you can find me that way.
Yeah, probably.
Link over. But shoot me a message if you wanna surf, or you wanna get to find out how you can volunteer, there's a big vacuum of volunteers, so please.
Yes, the adaptive surf community, one of the things we've been telling a lot of the different prone riders and visually impaired riders is, hey, start developing your own team. Don't just go to a clinic and find the best person. Start developing your own team. Start recruiting your own people. Something Ryan and I have been doing for years is just trying to recruit people to come down and help catch, or to start learning how to catch. So maybe if you become a good enough catcher, you can learn how to push, or start learning the process of being a visual guide or a surf guide in the water and things like that.
Because it's different. It's all different.
It is. But anyone that has like a background in swimming and water polo and the ocean, or even if you're like a diver who just surfs a lot and you have like actual surf knowledge and you board surf, or even if you bodyboard, it can even be effective out there. People that are true like watermen, people that are experienced around the ocean and the surf and have some swim background, those are the people we definitely look after and utilize a lot within the sport.
That is correct.
Yeah. And from one thing I've learned from knowing both of you, that there are a lot of people that say they want to volunteer. There are not a lot of people that show up and actually do what it takes to be qualified to help. And it's not just as simple as pushing someone or putting hands on somebody. There is, as I hope today's podcast has illustrated for the audience, there's just so much communication and interpersonal skills and so much development that has to happen for these successful evolutions to occur.
Exactly.
Yes, most definitely. And there are people that are very accomplished watermen that are terrible for adaptive surfing.
Yes.
Just because you're a good surfer doesn't mean you're a good coach or a good guide.
or you're able to be a good catcher or pusher. So yeah, all of it.
All of the above,
Yeah.
Joe. All of the above.
Well,
Exactly.
boys, a quick reminder for everybody listening at home: make sure to follow Joe at JoeJax_85, and make sure to follow Ryan at Sir Salty Beard. Follow me at LE_ORCA. Go on to Amazon. Help out that small local retailer. Purchase Poppies by Amy Sexauer. I can't recommend that book of poetry highly enough. We have some exciting episodes still coming from Coastal Athlete Program / Pitch by Pitch. If people are wondering why the intro has changed, going to give you a little inside baseball thing here. I no longer have the file with the original intro for the Coastal Athlete Program. So I'm going to have my wife re-record it, which will be fine. That's cool. But for now, we're going to be calling by Pitch. It's still going to be available on both platforms. But go to YouTube, youtube.com, search for GP Shepler, SCHEPPLER to watch today's podcast. Go to 1mwave.com, buy a t-shirt, buy a sticker, tell your friends, tell the world. Ryan, we definitely want to have you back on because we didn't even really get into some of your fun and exciting. We didn't get into any of your fun and exciting water stories. Like, I want to hear about all the times you almost drowned. I want to hear about all the times that crazy shit has happened to you in the ocean, the weird stuff.
I also want to talk about. I want to talk about his shortboard rehab that he's gone through and why he doesn't just shortboard anymore as much anymore.
How about the time that Anne-Marie thought I was going to die?
We could talk about that. That would be a good story. All AMS. She's a great old sport.
So much fruit left on the tree. And of course, I will eventually need to know why you bailed on us in Santa Cruz this past year and chose not to participate in the Adaptive Surf League event here. It's okay. Don't answer that now. You'll have to come back on the air to defend yourself. On behalf of Joe, myself, Posey, Tuck, Ryan, everybody here at Pitch by Pitch / Coastal Athlete Program / I don't know, whatever the fuck we're calling this thing at this point. Thank you for listening. Make sure to like and subscribe. Leave us a review. Tell your friends.
Make sure to follow Shep on social media at LE_ORCA.